Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Cosgrove, Public Policy Manager here at the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships, or NEEP. I'm going to get started with some introductions while we wait a couple minutes for others to join us. So this is our first policy framework webinar series this year, and today we're going to talk specifically about cost-benefit test and newest innovations in energy efficiency program areas. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And so this is the first policy framework webinar in a set of 3. As you can see from the slide here, today we'll be talking about cost-benefit tests, and in September we're going to have a webinar on energy efficiency retrofits, and then finally we will have a webinar in December on cap and invest policies. These webinars will also be accompanied by implementation guides, which are short guides meant to provide assistance to stakeholders, regulators, and other parties on how these policies interact with climate and equity goals. And next slide, please. A little background on NEEP, or the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership, before we get started. NEEP is a regional energy efficiency organization, or RIO, and we work to drive market transformation regionally by fostering collaboration, innovation, developing tools, and disseminating knowledge. And then finally, before we get started, I also wanted to give a big thanks to our funders. If you go to the next slide, and our network of allies and state partnerships. These relationships really help to guide and develop our work. Just click through the next 2 slides, please. And so we want to thank them before we get started. And now I'm going to turn my camera on and ask the policy team to do the same, because I'd like to introduce you to our policy and EM&V team who I work with here at NEEP. So if you like our presentation today, you can reach out to us for more questions. So Cecily, if you could go ahead first.
Sure. Thanks, Erin. I'm Cecily McCallicker. I'm the Research and Analysis Manager here at NEEP.
Thanks. And Andy.
Hey, everyone. Andy Winslow, Public Policy Associate here at NEEP.
Great. And also, Andy will be helping us out as we go through the webinar, so you might see his voice or hear his voice or see him from time to time. And with that, we will get started with the webinar. So if you go to the next slide. Great. So today, specifically, we're going to be talking about how to modify current energy efficiency practices to incorporate climate and equity goals by looking at how we update cost effectiveness practices, metrics, and portfolio design. So I'll be talking about cost effectiveness practices, and then we'll be highlighting a new approach to accomplishing climate policy and goals by looking at some developments in California. So if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a quick outline of the presentation. We had a last minute change up. So I'm going to start with a quick introduction to cost benefit tests and also an overview of how states can actually evolve their practices to incorporate climate equity and non-energy benefits. And then after this, we're going to turn it over to Mohit Chadra from the National Resource Defense Council, or NRDC, who will talk about energy efficiency portfolio segmentation and how that's helped kind of evolve energy efficiency programs in California. And then Adam Shear from Recurve will talk about a new metric, the total systems benefit metric, which actually provides a way to measure energy generation in more granular detail and how that can help as we incorporate new climate energy technology. And then finally, we will end with 10 to 15 minutes of a Q&A session, but just to let everyone know that is attending, because this is a webinar, you will be muted, but we have a Q&A feature on the bottom that you can use to add questions throughout the presentation. And also within the Q&A feature, there's a feature called an upvote feature, where you can promote questions. So if you go in to put a question and you see the question that you already want answered, you can click the like button or that's pictured there, and it'll bump or promote the question. And when we go to answer questions at the end of the webinar, we'll try to hit those first. And then also one last technical detail to work out is there are live captions right now running at the bottom of your screen, but there's a CC closed caption button if you're on the web where you can turn those captions off if you would like to. So just wanted to clarify that before we get started. And with now, we'll dive into energy efficiency portfolios and cost benefit tests. So to set the stage, right now, states are setting ambitious climate and equity policy goals. And to achieve these goals, we really think that states need to consider altering their regulatory framework for energy efficiency and other demand response programs. And this is because energy efficiency programs can really help in achieving state climate and equity goals because they lower emissions from the building sector by lowering energy usage. Additionally, these programs have the significant potential to reduce energy poverty and help alleviate energy injustices, but we have to design these programs in order to include these goals. So I will first touch on cost benefit tests here and how we can design those. So what are cost benefit tests? Cost benefit tests are used to assess the cost effectiveness of energy efficiency programs. And basically cost effectiveness is a regulatory term for how do we make sure that ratepayer investments result in benefits for customers, utility systems, and society at large. Additionally, these tests can serve to signal to program administrators and or utilities what the state is prioritizing in their energy efficiency and other goals. So for example, if you look at the picture on the chart here, you can see a cost benefit breakdown. And some of the benefits that we have highlighted are economic investment or reduced air emissions. But if these benefits weren't counted for in this image here to show a cost benefit test, this program would arguably maybe not pass this test. It would not be considered a valuable investment for ratepayer dollars. And this is why it's important that we look at what metrics are put in these tests and how they're measured. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of what the current state practices are when it comes to cost benefit tests. So cost benefit tests were actually established by the California Standard Practice Manual, or the CSPM. And the CSPM presents 5 tests. And the 3 tests pictured here are kind of what I see as the foundational tests, or they're called perspective tests. And these tests focus on costs and benefits, but only from a singular perspective. So you have the utility, the participant, and the ratepayer. And when I'm saying costs and benefits, I mean costs being exchanged, goods being bought, lower or higher energy bills, hiring contractors, those numbers. And then only from that certain perspective. And then if we, next slide, please. And then the other 2 tests that are introduced by the CSPM are kind of looked at as more holistic view. And so the first of these 2 tests is the total resource cost test. And this test actually looks to combine the impacts for both the utility and the participant. So you see a test that is able to capture both sides of those 2 sides of a program or a portfolio design. And then on top of that, we have what's called the societal benefits test. And the societal benefit test is even a step up from the TRC because it looks at impacts to society as a whole. And societal impacts are those impacts that happen outside of the direct participant or the utility or the program administrator. And actually, if you think back from the picture that I showed earlier, societal impacts are considered the economic investment and reduced emissions, those metrics that helped it become beneficial. So those are the 5 tests that are currently used. And it would appear right now that if a state has a societal cost test, they're probably counting all of these factors. But our research has actually shown that the SCT and sometimes even the TRC, they kind of pick and choose the metrics. So while it appears that a state might be including all these benefits, that actually might not be true. So how do we make sure that states are actually including these metrics and policies in their tests? Next slide, please. At NEEP, we have proposed, and actually if you reference the National Standards Practice Manual, which goes into way more detail than I'll be able to do here, they also have a test such as this, but we've proposed a jurisdiction-specific test or a test from the regulatory perspective. It's important to consider making a test from this perspective because these tests can actually be designed to accommodate state needs, state policies, and stakeholder input. So the test is more encompassing than just the singular participant, utility, and ratepayer, but also can be more specific for the state than the societal cost test. And it's also able to actually reflect the priorities and the responsibilities of regulators, because it also can combine energy, environmental, and equity priorities. And this is really because through the process of designing the test, states are able to pick and choose from these buckets of policy or metrics and come up with something that reflects what is their state goals. And so Next slide, please. And so at NEEP, we've actually developed a guide for how states can start this journey because through the research, we've realized that there's really two important areas to establishing a jurisdictional cost benefit test. And that is a clear process and also identifying metrics that can meet policy that doesn't really normally fall into the energy realm. So first I'll go over why process is so important. So currently, right now, we'll have agencies identify cost benefit tests, sometimes in a public proceeding or in the energy efficiency framework, but they will then go into maybe different proceedings, or the test or the factors might be debated in other areas. So there is a general test that we know a state uses, but the inputs or the metrics might not be as transparent. So what we want to make sure is that the inputs and the metrics and what's important is transparent. And you do that through making a clear process. And this provides opportunity for meaningful participation, and it allows for parties to identify what is valued in the state energy and environmental policy and how it should be valued. And finally, it also brings in different perspectives to inform these conversations, which can really help as policies change. And we've basically broken out four different areas that this process should fall into. And that is outlining the stakeholder input in the public review process, identifying the relevant state, environment, and energy policies, aligning policies with metrics in this test, which I'm going to go into in just a minute. And finally, after the program is implemented via the test, review the test, the inputs, modify, and make sure that it stays within the state goals and that it's successful. And so that is kind of a quick process. And now now I will go into how a state can actually incorporate the metrics or the policies of climate equity and energy into their cost benefit tests through metrics. So next slide, please. So the first thing that I want to talk about that's important that we consider when we look at cost benefit tests is societal benefits. And this is important because a first step in really aligning energy policy with climate and equity is acknowledging that the impacts of our energy system reach beyond the utility, the participant, and the ratepayer. We know that every dollar invested in these programs impacts in different ways images that are pictured on this screen, but it's not really common practice to include these benefits or costs because they haven't been considered a key decision point in energy policy just yet. But it's important that we start to change this because without acknowledging these, we actually might be missing out on cost-effective, climate-focused, innovative energy solutions. And just to give you kind of an idea, right now, I think we found about 10 states that really do find a way to measure these impacts, but we know that all of the states actually provide these impacts, and these impacts can be provided through programs. So it's important first and foremost that we think about how we can put societal impacts into the cost effectiveness test so that we start to understand that energy impacts more than just the utility system. Next slide, please. The other policy area that we discussed in our implementation guide to put into test is equity. And that's because that history shows that without thoughtful intervention, energy programs can actually perpetuate inequity and create additional economic hardship for already overburdened communities. And it's important to include equity metrics when designing programs so that to the extent practicable, we can kind of start to account and work to prevent these impacts. But sometimes when you're implementing equity policy, there's a barrier in how do we measure these impacts? And there's two approaches that NEEP has identified that states could take to incorporate costs and benefits identified on this slide. And the first is that you can identify equity policy via non-energy benefits. So some specific non-energy benefits, some equity-specific non-energy benefits are those pictured on the slide here. And we know for environmental justice in overburdened communities, the negative and positive impacts of these programs are often multiplied. So one way to just make sure that we are acknowledging that is just to design cost benefit tests by utilizing specific and measurable additional metrics within these areas that are able to highlight the benefits and the costs. And this is able to make sure that these impacts are included in cost effectiveness tests. Another way that states can look to incorporate equity policy into their cost effectiveness tests is by using what we call an adder. So an adder is just a percentage applied to metrics that are difficult or costly to monetize. And an equity adder can actually quantify impacts without needing to take time to identify precise numbers for each. And a couple of states have done this. One example is Vermont, which has actually adopted a 15% adder that accounts for benefits such as reducing the energy burden, comfort for more controlled indoor climates, and investment in homes, specifically in equity areas. And that concludes our equity policy metrics. If you could go to the next slide, please. Yes. The final area that we've identified in our implementation guide that we think is valuable for states to include in cost benefit tests is climate policy. And that is really because state climate plans discuss a different electrical grid than the one that exists now. And we've kind of identified 3 different buckets that states go after climate policy. And that's lowering emissions, lowering energy use, and incorporating new clean energy technology. And it kind of depends on the state how they're going to go about this, because they can determine how much they want to lower their energy use, how much they want to integrate large-scale renewables, or how much they want to do a mix of all 3. And so it is important that right now we kind of even start to determine a way to include a metric or metrics that can start to account for this policy and also account for the impacts that may not have been considered before in climate policy, such as greenhouse gas emissions. So we've identified 3 different ways that state can start to incorporate climate policy into their cost benefit test. And the first is by using something that's called a fuel neutral metric. So a fuel neutral metric such as MMBTU, or million British thermal units, is a measure of energy that considers gas, electricity, and other fuels alongside one another. So currently energy saving goals are kind of separated by source, such as gas or electric, but we know for decarbonization and climate efforts, we're aiming for reducing energy in all sectors. And so if regulators use a fuel neutral metric, they can actually just focus on cost-effective strategies and not worry about generation and focus on what's best for cost for the consumers. The second metric that states can use to incorporate climate policies into their cost effectiveness test is a metric that actually values the impact of GHG emissions. So what does emitting a ton of carbon or other greenhouse gas cost, and how much would we pay to have that ton not emitted? And one such metric that is used in a couple of states now is the social cost of carbon. And this metric properly values the cost of emitting pollutants by quantifying the harms of emissions in dollars. And this can hold programs accountable for these emissions and incentivize program administrators to design portfolios that do not therefore have these emissions. And then the final metric that we've identified to help integrating climate policy is something called the total lifetime benefits. And I'm going to give a quick overview, and then this is something that Mohit and Adam will touch on in their presentation. But this total lifetime benefit metric is a new metric that looks to incorporate renewables, smart appliances, electric vehicles, and other new technology. And that's because it uses very granular data to identify costs and benefits and presents a new way that is able to compare clean energy technology to pipes and wires investments and prices energy based on how and when it is generated, while also considering climate impacts. And so that concludes my overview of the climate policy metrics, but I'm excited to say that now I'm going to pass it over and continue the discussion of how we can embed climate policy into other metrics I'm going to say call this taking a half step back, because I kind of just did a deep dive into how we customize a cost benefit test to accommodate multiple state objectives and metrics. But there are also some issues with attempting to put all of these goals into one test. So I'm now going to hand it over to Mohit Shadra from the National Resource Defense Council to talk about how California has gone after tackling these goals.
Good afternoon to all of you on the East Coast. I'm Mohit. I work with NRDC as part of our Western Energy team, and I'm here to talk about better aligning energy efficiency portfolios with policy goals. And that's important in the context of this conversation, because when we talk cost benefit analysis, two two foundational questions that we need to answer is, from whose perspective are we doing this and to what end? And in answering those questions, we can figure out how to connect policy goals with how we measure programs. So next slide, please. So energy efficiency has many requirements these days, and they're growing. And here's an example of some of these requirements. You use energy efficiency to meet load growth. You use energy efficiency to conduct programs to conduct research on emerging technologies, use energy efficiency to administer low and middle income programs, train workforces, market transformation, and so on. And all of these requirements, next slide, are there to achieve sometimes different policy objectives. So sometimes energy efficiency is a good resource, sometimes for market development, equity, and so on. And while this has been happening, and I'm pretty certain this isn't a California-specific situation, other states have these different asks as well. Next slide. Some changes have been afoot. So go-to cost-effective measures of the past have either become code and or standard practice, right? Like residential LED lighting. In California, the climate goals have gotten more stringent. Importance of equity in the clean energy transition is recognized. And while this has been happening, programs, at least in California, have struggled to meet cost-effective standards while completing all these policy objectives. So we've seen programmatic budgets dwindle. Next slide. So the problem that we were faced in California, still are to some extent, is the disconnect between the policy objectives of the state and energy efficiency portfolio constraints. Juggling so many different program asks, maximizing energy savings, and maintaining a cost-effective portfolio, where cost effectiveness is primarily measured for energy efficiency as an energy resource, and that too not perfectly, is very hard. So you need a way to guide investment in the right amount and right type of energy efficiency initiatives so that you do three things here: meet near and long-term energy needs, climate goals for states that have them, and then enhance equity and social welfare. So this requires a different structure. Next slide, please. So the policy solution that we proposed in California was to cleave and reorganize. So break up the energy efficiency portfolio into three sub-portfolios. The first one is resource energy efficiency. So this is that part of the portfolio where the primary intent is to save energy and carbon cost effectively. And existing cost effectiveness tests that Erin described are best suited to this. And when we design cost effectiveness for this, we need to be sure to have the cost effectiveness test best reflect state policy and treat all resources equally. By that, I mean, the total resource cost test, for example, includes both customer cost to buy an energy efficiency measure, costs incurred by the utility, but mostly includes only benefits of the utility system and any other policy that utilities are mandated to meet. So the test needs to be balanced for energy efficiency and also treat energy efficiency the same as supply side resources. The second bucket is long-term market transformation. And this is that tranche of energy efficiency where you aren't really going for near-term benefits, you're investing in future benefits. So that could include research, emerging technology, programs to bring technology to the market, and so on. So this is critical. It's been done a lot, but it's not best reflected as a, what have you done for me lately? Resource energy efficiency. And the final bucket is the equity bucket. This is where you want to provide non-energy benefits where energy and climate goals is an objective, but it's only one of multiple objectives. The other objectives really are to enhance welfare, provide measures that improve health, comfort, safety, and these non-energy benefits, we've talked about them for a while, for years in the energy efficiency space, but they're really hard to quantify consistently. And there's a lot of heterogeneity, variance within these benefits. So some research that's pertinent to a certain customer class in one state isn't often applicable to the other. So it's really hard to define and develop cost effectiveness tests that holistically get at this. Next slide, please. Part of the proposal was to, for each sub-portfolio, design policy objective aligned regulation to develop goals and budgets, determine cost effectiveness tests, tracking metrics, implementation strategies, and evaluation guidelines. So what does that mean for each of these three buckets? Next slide, please. So for resource energy efficiency, those that are primarily intended to save energy and carbon, we push for the metric that Adam's going to explain next, the total systems benefit. And this really is predicated on accurate avoided costs for a region. And in California, the avoided costs are developed and they're tied to our grid of the future. And happy to talk more details at some point about that offline to whoever wants, and include carbon valuations that are aligned with where our grid's going. And for long-term market transformation programs, the cost effectiveness tests, evaluation and such should take a longer term view. So investing in this initiative may be a 10, 15, or 20-year prospect. And over that time horizon, what are the total benefits that you get? And a good example of how this is done is in the Northwest. There's the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance that has some really good policy for how to deal with long-term market transformation programs. Finally, with the equity bucket, where we landed was it's really hard to come up with a quantitative test. And what you're trying to achieve is a lot of times a little outside the bounds of electric sector or energy sector customer economics. You really want to give non-energy benefits, enhance welfare. So the key question for policymakers here to answer is how much of energy customer budget should be spent on these activities and how to maximize the spending of that budget. So the system that we developed or proposed was to come up with a budget, start an inclusive process with communities to figure out what your equity metrics would be, and then figure out a way for the programs to spend their budget to maximize on those metrics. As opposed to a pass-fail cost effectiveness, this is more of a view of let's figure out what our equity metrics are and then let's best get them. Next slide, please. So the PUC, their decision listed here, they adopted a lot of these. And what they did was they divided the existing energy efficiency portfolio into the resource portfolio and an equity and market support portfolio. So the resource portfolio, the cost effectiveness rules of traditional EE still apply. For the equity and market support portfolio, they limited the budget to 30% of the total portfolio budget, and they've initiated a process to start figuring out metrics for equity and market support. So we look forward to participating in that. And this sub-portfolio is incremental to, in California, we have a energy savings assistance program that's for specific lower income customers. And so this will be incremental to that. And the commission has also initiated a separate process to develop a long-term market transformation portfolio that's underway. And this decision is publicly available and you can go through that. Next slide, please. And that's all I got for you today. Here are some links to the PUC decision, NRDC proposals that inform the decision, and our blog that is a shorter, succinct version of our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, Adam Shear from Recur will be next. And I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A section and we will answer them hopefully at the end.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, and I want to say thanks to you, Aaron, and the NEEP team. It's nice to meet you here on this webinar, and I really appreciate the chance to address this audience. And I want to say congratulations also to Mohit just right out the gate. He, in particular, along with his colleagues at NRDC, have been pushing for a lot of common sense solutions in the California energy efficiency portfolio, and we're seeing some of that bear fruit, but it's been years in the making, and it really just shows how persistence is a necessary element in our industry that tends to be like the Titanic sometimes. So I'll talk a little bit about why some of these policy changes are important in California and how others can learn from them, and just kind of frame policy and regulation around more common sense principles that are aligned with today's goals of energy efficiency portfolios, not past goals per se. So one of the things I always think about when I'm confronted with this question of cost effectiveness and goals is my time at Pacific Gas and Electric Company. So I spent 5 years at PG&E in their EM&V team, and then in their programs team and their policy team. And I saw firsthand how the goals and the cost effectiveness requirements of the portfolio were misaligned for a long time. And that left us with very difficult decisions where oftentimes we knew we were making decisions that weren't necessarily aligned with policy goals, but were constrained in our decision making because of other requirements like cost effectiveness. And when we had a mismatch of those objectives, we really had to strike some deals with the devil, so to speak. For instance, because equity was tangled up in the rest of the portfolio but wasn't valued appropriately, we oftentimes had to devote less money toward those kinds of programs because they weren't cost effective, for example. So the big victory in these goal alignment with the total systems benefits, which I'll talk about in this presentation, is that now we have goals that are more aligned with the policy objectives and can be valued accordingly. And instead of having like annual KWH goals, now we have a goal that is more aligned with the benefits and the cost effectiveness equation itself. So those two big pillars of the energy efficiency portfolio and how it's measured are more aligned now. And again, that's in large part thanks to Mohit and the team at NRDC and their good work. So we can go to the next slide. So I just wanted folks to think a little bit about, for those of you who've been in the industry for a long time, think back a decade. In 2011, what do we really care about in our energy efficiency portfolios? I wasn't even in the industry at this point. I joined maybe in 2014. But even at that point, when I came to PG&E, we were focused predominantly on annual energy efficiency savings goals. So annual KWH, annual therms, how much did we save? Did we meet our goals? And cost effectiveness was maybe an ancillary consideration, but it was pretty far down the list of things that we really cared about. And in large part, that was because cost effectiveness wasn't a barrier in the portfolio. We had lots of sort of low-hanging fruit with lighting and CFLs and then later LEDs that could kind of hold the rest of the portfolio afloat. So we could do things like deeper decarbonization with building retrofits and workforce training and the kinds of things that we all know we need to do in order to set the foundation for long-term decarbonization and load management, like Mohit talked about. You can't get there with LEDs alone. If you fast forward to 2021, you can click forward, then look at our goals now. And this is just my super official ranking, but the annual energy efficiency savings goals, like how much annual KWH did you change? especially in a place like California where you have the duck curve that really makes it so a kWh saved during the middle of the day is very, very different than during the peak period. Those objectives just are on paper only anymore, really. So what is our biggest goal now? It's really decarbonization, and then it's grid reliability and security, and then it's probably equity, and then how do you get there? Well, you get there through electrification, demand flexibility, and then you finally get down to cost effectiveness and annual goals and things like that. They're just less important than I think they used to be. So we really need portfolio goals that align, and cost effectiveness policy that aligns with what we actually care about in today's world. So that's where this total systems benefits metric comes in. If you go to the next slide. The CPUC, to their credit, has for a long time had a number of value streams that are represented in their avoided cost calculator. And this is essentially what determines the benefits in the cost effectiveness calculation. And there are a number of benefits that are represented here. I wouldn't say it's comprehensive to align with all of the policy objectives, but we see things like not only energy and sort of the cost of fuel represented, but we also see things like a GHG adder to make sure that we're valuing the GHG savings accordingly, and how they align with policy objectives that even goes beyond cap and trade. Where in California we have a cap and trade policy already in place for managing GHG, and then we also have grid factors like capacity, transmission, distribution. All of that is represented here. And then even lately we've added refrigerants, so high global warming potential gases. If programs can address refrigerants, then you can have a big impact, especially in short-term global warming issues with some of these high GWP refrigerants. I will say just a caveat that we haven't yet worked in refrigerants, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But nonetheless, we have a number of factors here. Not exactly comprehensive, you don't see equity in this list, but that's one of the reasons why it's important that we can now break off equity into a separate portfolio and say, we're not going to force the equity portfolio itself to meet a certain cost effectiveness threshold. So we're basically saying cost effectiveness can be addressed in part by portfolio design. Where do we need to be cost effective? Where is this kind of thing relevant? And where are other policy objectives maybe more paramount? So we can go to the next slide. This is how these avoided costs or these value streams are represented when you look at just an average daily load profile. So this is like an average daily profile of the avoided costs. So if you just had a flat savings curve, then this is how you would accumulate value from that savings profile. And all of this is on a marginal basis. So we can talk a little bit more about that if folks have questions, but it's basically the concept of what is the next megawatt hour you need to put on the grid, and what is the cost associated with that? Because we're all working on the margins with energy efficiency and demand management. And you can see, two things are very readily apparent. One is that in the middle of the day, we have a dip in avoided costs, and that's reflective of the fact that in California, we have a lot of solar coming online, a lot of renewables, and in the middle of the day, oftentimes now we're even curtailing renewable energy. And then in the evening, especially in the summertime, we have very high avoided costs. So, if I save a kilowatt hour at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., it's worth 5 times more than if I save a kilowatt hour at 11 a.m., for example. So this fact is one of the reasons why having annual kWh savings goals makes very little sense. It's really, what are we getting out of that kilowatt hour? Are we getting the GW, the global warming gases? Are we getting things like methane avoided because of that? Or are we just curtailing more solar power? And that's what's reflected in an avoided cost curve like this. So it's really important now that we align, given this reality, when we're saving energy with the goals of the portfolio, not just the cost effectiveness metric where this is automatically sort of incorporated into the calculation. So one of the things I want to also say is this is just the electric avoided costs. There's also the gas avoided costs that I won't talk about today just for time constraints. So we can go to the next slide. Now, one of the things that actually holds a portfolio back is not just what's the policy around cost effectiveness. Of course, it's how are you implementing that policy? And in order to implement a policy, you have to have tools, literally computational tools to run cost effectiveness calculations, for example. And California actually has a very good tool. It's called the cost effectiveness tool, the CET as we call it. But that has, it's very difficult for the tooling to keep pace with the policy. And we've seen a number of instances where the tooling itself or the computational tools themselves have restrained policy. Either policy doesn't get implemented or it gets implemented in a very delayed fashion, or it inhibits policy from being created in the first place. And just as an example to this, in California, we now are mandated to work in refrigerants, avoided refrigerant emissions into the cost effectiveness calculation. And that's been the case for years now, but we haven't yet incorporated that into the cost effectiveness tool, so nobody can actually do this. Same thing with load shapes. Right now, if you go back a slide, Andy, the load shape where you're where are you saving energy? When are you saving energy? It really, really impacts how much your program is going to be valued. If you're saving a lot of energy in the evening time versus in the middle of the day, then you have a much more cost-effective program. But right now in California, at least, all we can do in the cost effectiveness tooling is to incorporate preset load shapes. So load shapes that have already been determined for things like commercial lighting or things like HVAC systems, whatever it might be. But here's the issue. If I'm an implementer and I want to optimize the cost effectiveness of my program, or if I'm a utility and I want to optimize the cost effectiveness of my portfolio, then I want to encourage people to save energy in the evening. So take a smart thermostat as an example. When I install that smart thermostat, the way the portfolio works right now is I get a predetermined load shape impact from that smart thermostat. But so if I'm an implementer, I get rewarded for installing a whole bunch of thermostats, but it doesn't even matter if I program them because I'm just claiming a load shape and I'm claiming a kWh savings value associated with that. But wouldn't it be nice if we could say, well, let's take the measured load shape impact that we're actually seeing and apply it to the cost effectiveness calculation. And we now have the ability to do this, but we need the tooling to catch up. So if we go forward a slide, one of the things that we've done is to actually put together a set of open source cost effectiveness tools. We call it Flex Value. I won't talk a lot about it today, but needless to say, the open source model is something we're a fan of, because then the community can update these tools and create versions that the regulator can then approve. And we don't have to wait for a lengthy contracting process to take place, or we don't have to wait for a lot of QA/QC on the part of a regulator, but we can just say, look, the community has access to these open source tools. We can verify them. For instance, if we wanted to work in the refrigerant avoided costs, we can now do that in Flex Value. The CPUC can, or a regulator can verify that that has been done properly. And then the tooling is available to everybody to perform cost effectiveness calculations and to model portfolios accordingly. So if you go forward a slide, I'll just give you one quick example. This is a portfolio that we actually measured. The upper 3 panels of this graph are the load shape impacts that this program had. This was like a commercial grocery store program, and it was predominantly lighting. And then those 3 panels at the top are the summer, shoulder, and winter load shape impacts that this program had. And those bottom 3 panels are the avoided cost profile, the benefits and the cost effectiveness calculation that we calculate with these open source tools. And you'll notice that it's a little chaotic, but overall it's a pretty flat load shape impact. And that makes sense because grocery stores use energy 24/7. Now, if you go to the next slide, this is what this program was actually claiming. This is what this program used to calculate their cost effectiveness. It was these commercial lighting load shapes that are predetermined. So if you just, Andy, if you wouldn't mind just toggling back and forth once or twice, and you can just visually, you can see the difference between the measured load shape impact and the claimed load shape impact. This has a, if you remember that bar chart that I showed earlier, this really has an impact on how the program is valued. And it also has a big impact on the credibility of this program in saying, hey, we can serve a grid need, because a procurement planner needs to know when energy is going to be saved. And it's much more impactful if you have a measured value that they can trust, because, just right away, we have this clear example of where if this program was saving, hey, we're going to save a certain amount of energy at these times of day, it would be wildly off from what it's actually accomplishing. So one more slide forward. I want to end just by reminding folks, we've talked probably 98% of this discussion so far has been about the benefits in a cost effectiveness calculation. But I want folks to remember that there's a denominator too. And the denominator also holds a lot of our policy objectives to account. And what I'm showing in this bar chart is all of the components that go into the TRC costs in the PG&E portfolio. And you can see there's admin, there's marketing, there's implementation, there's incentives, but that big blue bar toward the end, from $300 million to $500 million, this is participant investment. And as Aaron talked about earlier, the TRC captures participant cost, because the participant cost test is effectively like one of the pillars of the TRC. But if we think about this for a moment, what do we want our programs to do? We get limited ratepayer funding, and we want our programs to be able to take that limited ratepayer funding and motivate as much participant investment as possible, as much private capital as possible. We want to be able to take one ratepayer dollar and turn it into $10 that goes toward decarbonization. And right now, the TRC as a policy punishes you for doing that. And this doesn't have to be the case. As Aaron also talked about, the National Standard Practice Manual talks a lot about the fact that cost effectiveness tests need, among other priorities, to be symmetric. And what we've lacked in cost effectiveness policy is symmetry in these tests. So the TRC can be made symmetric by either valuing all of the reasons participants are investing in their own homes and businesses. So air quality, resale value, increased productivity, all of those kinds of things can be added to the numerator of the TRC equations as benefits. But we've talked about that for a long time, and there's been relatively little progress on that. Aaron gave a couple counterexamples to that. But what I want to suggest to everybody is that's only one way to go about this question. Another way to go about it is to say, what is represented in the costs of the equation? And should we really be inhibiting programs from achieving a high degree of private investment in energy efficiency and demand management? And I would argue that we shouldn't be inhibiting that, especially when it comes to new program mechanisms like financing, where you can really multiply the value of a ratepayer dollar in terms of what you're getting back. So I'll leave everybody with that thought. The next slide just has some resources, and so there's a white paper. There's an article that we published on the symmetry issue with AEE. And I'd also point out there's the flex value tools and code are available to everybody. If you wanted to run cost effectiveness calculations yourself, you can do so. You don't need to write any code. There's a whole bunch of resources available where open source cost effectiveness tools can now help us get past some of these slow elements of updating policy and really implementing it. So I'll stop there. Thanks everyone, and happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Adam. Great, and we did, oh yeah, I think we can close the PowerPoint slide for now, and we'll pop it up again in a couple more minutes. But so we had a couple questions come in, but I specifically, I wanted to start us off because Adam highlighted that Mohit, it took a couple of years to get this new portfolio segmentation. You came up with it, and it was a lot of persistence to actually get it implemented. So if you could highlight some of the barriers that you came across with, and maybe especially with regulators or private businesses or utilities specifically.
One barrier I came up with was when we try to be pretty pure in our reasoning, theoretically at least, but when you apply it, different program administrators and or implementers looked at it as, how will this impact my program? So I had to draw a line there between getting influenced by private interests. It is important to take care of programs, but it's also first important to figure out, where your North Star is and balance those two. So that was one. We got lucky, I don't think all of this was great advocacy. It was the right time to push for something like this. A lot of these debates we've been happening when the results come in that as our climate goals are increasing, our portfolio budgets and achievements are decreasing, you don't have to work too hard to convince people that you need some change, right? So we got, it was the right time. We got a little lucky, and we had some really good, smart staff at the PUC that took these up, asked a lot of questions, and improved upon them in their decision. So I would say the main barriers were convincing people that doing things a different way isn't crazy and it's necessary, and that just required a lot of talking, so, which can be exhausting. And then sort of trying to stick to the right principles of the solution and not get influenced, because everyone looks at it as, what will this mean for my job? And you have to think through it, but there's a way to balance that.
Adam, do you have any insights? Because I imagine that you might have actually been working in California when this segmentation was proposed, maybe at a different place than Recurve. So how did you first view it? How did you come around to it? And how do you see it now as someone that works in these programs?
Well, how I first viewed it, I think, was very much in line with how Mohit, I sort of feel like Mohit and I almost had this idea like simultaneously, and really put our heads together. And I've really appreciated his collaboration over the years here, and his advocacy. It's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to like make it happen. And I think that's what I would really give people. Like, if you remember one thing from this presentation, it's policy has to be implemented. And I think for a long time in California, at least, we've lacked we've allowed ourselves to just fall into rabbit holes in implementing policy. Like the refrigerant one is a good one. Like the refrigerant stuff's been on the books for 3 years. We have yet to implement it. So it is not enough if you're a regulator or if you're from the legislature, whatever it may be, it is not enough to set policy. You have to follow, you have to make sure that it's followed through. And so like really, and that's not to say you have to come down like a sack of concrete blocks on the utility partners or something like that. It's more to say that it really helps if things are streamlined, and you've got to find partners within the program world that are willing to do this kind of stuff. You need to talk with them. And make it so that, I know at PG&E, we were terrified all the time of the regulator and of stakeholders and all this kind of stuff. And that prevented us from implementing a lot of this stuff the way that I think common sense would dictate you would do. So I would just say, follow through on the implementation front, because lots of policies die at the hands of confusion.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that. And then there's two, I think, sort of wonky specific questions to Adam that came in the chat that I want to hit on while I have you. So the first, this says the CPUC is addressing methane leakage. Could you speak more to that? Are they using a deem factor or specific calculations that's applied to natural gas production? And is it factored into the GHGs and social cost of carbon and DA7 programs?
Yeah, good question. So the way this is approached is basically a question of what is the marginal unit of energy that you're saving any given hour of the year, right? And so if the marginal unit that you're saving is from natural gas, then you have natural gas savings associated with that. And because of that, you reduce methane leakage. And so during those hours of the year, you get basically a kicker on the avoided cost profile due to the fact that you're saving methane. If you save a kilowatt hour in the middle of the day when the forecast calls for solar curtailment, then you're not saving methane. So it's basically treated like a temporal component of when you're saving energy, and if there's natural gas on the grid at that point on the margin, then you get the methane leakage avoided cost that you can incorporate into your calculation for that hour. That's projected out in the avoided cost calculator, so that's all there. It is treated as a global warming gas, of course, but it's treated separately than just like the GHG adder.
Can I add just one thing to that? So it's a flat percentage leakage, that deemed value, and it's a 20-year global warming potential value, I think, right now. And it's scaled according to the carbon value which we have, which is slightly different than a social cost of carbon. It's a marginal abatement cost of carbon. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then I actually have, well, yeah, there's one more clarifying question, I guess. Adam showed some charts of hourly load changes aggregated by season and a heat map where load changes are aggregated by month. And is there a norm in terms of what level of aggregation works better for policymakers or regulators that you've come across? I guess either one of you might be able to answer this.
That's a really good question. I would say, yeah. So if you are in a jurisdiction where like many now, where it really matters when you save energy, then the more granular you can get, the better. And I would say, like, if you're at a jurisdiction that has only monthly data, for example, then maybe it's less. You still have to rely on deemed load shapes and that kind of thing. But having hourly smart meter data available really can help you put these avoided costs to use. For example, like in California, where we have meter-based programs now, we can say, look, we're going to pay incentives on that align with the total system benefits. And so we have some programs that we're working with folks where we're doing exactly that, instead of just paying like per kWh and forgetting about when we're saving. That's a really, really important factor in modernizing the portfolio. So the avoided costs are the price signal. It's like the value signal. If you want to have a market, then you need a value signal out there. And the more granular that can be, the better. But I would say it can also be taken overboard. Like, the perfect can be the enemy of the good. So I would say start where you need to, but work toward that.
Great, thank you. And then I have one question that I'm going to finish us out with. And it's actually, I think, specifically for Mohit, but maybe Adam, you can inform a little. But with the portfolio segmentation in California, I believe that you said with the market and the equity segment, they were going to do a cost effectiveness test, but it doesn't seem like there's going to be a cost effectiveness test. There's going to be kind of policy guidance. And I was wondering, how did they decide that it was okay to not have a cost effectiveness test? And what policy is considered good enough policy guidance to replace that, or where that stands right now?
I think they recognize the fact that it is hard because they've been trying to quantify these non-energy benefits for years and apply them in a forward-looking manner. And it's just hard. And they also recognize the fact that what we're trying to do here is a little outside the bounds of how do we get least cost energy solutions for ratepayers. And that is a policy question. And that policy question deserves a policy solution. I'd be kidding myself if I were to say I can figure out in a forward-looking manner what is the exact dollar value of non-energy benefits from insulation for a retirement community and or general population separately. They're probably very, very differently. So the question that they needed to answer was, how much extra money can we spend for these goals? So they bought into the theory. They drank the Kool-Aid, and here we are.
Mm-hmm. I would add just one really quick thought to that. With market transformation, I think the question is a little awkward if you're asking it through the terms of a traditional cost effectiveness policy. I think you need to look at it through the goals of the state. If this, in California, we have 100% decarbonization targets. Market transformation, we should be asking ourselves, in 15, 20 years, the length of time that a market transformation program might really need to take hold and cause major changes in the market. Are we going to get there without it, right? And if you're not going to get there without it, I think you got your answer a lot of the time. So it makes a lot of sense not to constrain the market transformation portfolio with a cost effectiveness test that really wasn't necessarily designed to give you, that kind of insight, especially when it comes to like discount rates, right? I mean, the cost effectiveness test might have a 7-8% discount rate. If you're only going to get benefits 20 years in the future, you might as well just forget about it just because of that alone.
Thank you so much for adding that. And yes, that will wrap the question and answer segment of our webinar. And thank you so much, Adam and Mohit, for joining us today and offering valuable insights and information from the West Coast for us that hopefully we can learn and build upon here. Great. And then also, just before we finish off, a couple of housekeeping announcements. The first is that at NEEP, we have a couple of cost benefit test resources if you're interested in this conversation and want to do a little bit more research. We have an advanced M&V for decarbonization policies webpage that talks about not just cost benefit tests, but the whole EM&V current energy efficiency portfolio and how it can be transformed. And then also a cost benefit test implementation guide that goes into the outline that I provided at the beginning of the presentation today. And then just one final reminder that we will be having 2 more webinars, a webinar on energy efficiency retrofits on September 7th, a webinar on cap and investment policies on December 14th, all within our policy framework webinar series. So keep an eye out for those emails. And then finally, we have an upcoming event that Andy is going to tell you a little bit about.
Just really quickly to top off our presentation, an upcoming event, sort of unrelated to the discussion today, but we will be hosting an event on building performance standards on June 29th, which is a Tuesday. And the EPA will be going over a resource on metrics that could be used for such a building performance standard. And we will also be hearing from Washington, D.C. and learning how they implemented their standard and the barriers that they ran into. So we hope to see you there on June 29th.
Great, thank you so much, Andy. And yes, if you have any questions for me, Adam or Mohit, feel free to shoot us an email. Thank you all for attending, and thank you to our presenters. I hope you guys have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.